Hey guys, welcome to the frequently asked questions about fasting and what to expect. We just praise God for you. If you're watching right now, drop something in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from. And I want to remind you, anybody that sows this week, specifically this week on this broadcast, on fasting, as long as we have supplies, anybody who sows at giveww.org or hashtag donate in the comments on Facebook, we're going to give you a free copy of Ted Jr.'s book. There it is on the screen. And so go ahead. If you want to sow, we want to give to you. That's our gift to you for any amount whatsoever, and we praise God for you. Amen. So now let's jump right into frequently asked questions and what to expect when fasting. Now, one of the things I want you to see is this. I want to give you some quotes before we jump into the frequently asked questions, which will be just 1 minute. I want to give you some quotes about fasting. And here's some things that we've said already. Fasting is a supernatural tool that God has given us. It's a supernatural tool. And now know this, if God gives you a tool, He's also going to give you the provision to wield it properly. Amen. I wrote this several years ago, and it's simplistic, but hear this. Somebody put that in the comments. Fasting is a supernatural tool that God has given us. The next thing, supernatural things happen in our lives because we apply supernatural principles. Fleshly things happen in our lives because we apply fleshly principles. In other words, I know that that's simple, but see, a lot of times people keep utilizing fleshly, worldly principles and getting fleshly, worldly results. If we want supernatural, then we've got to use supernatural tools like fasting. I wrote this, if we would just get to the place where we would truly submit our flesh, the rise in our lives would be magnificent. The rise in our lives would be magnificent if we would just get to the place where we tell our flesh, no flesh, you're going to have to fast this time. You're going to have to go after God. It would be awesome. Bishop David Oyedepo said this, anything supernatural is facilitated by faith. We need to apply faith to our fasting because anything supernatural is facilitated by faith. Instead of being fearful for fasting, we should apply faith to fast supernaturally. And put that in the comments. Instead of being fearful of fasting, we should apply faith to fast supernaturally. Instead of being fearful, we should apply faith to fast supernaturally. And Bishop David also said this, I love this comment, don't eat away your destiny. Don't eat away your destiny. In other words, there's a destiny that you will never reach if you're not fasting as a believer. There's a destiny you will never reach if you're not fasting. Don't eat away your destiny. My goal throughout this whole week, and if you haven't watched it and you go back to it, the first thing we talked about on Monday, my goal is for everyone to consider how to fast at a higher level. I want everyone to consider, how do I fast at a higher level than I've done before, right? And you'll watch this sweetness of fasting, the sweetness of this supernatural tool come through for you. If you haven't seen it at the beginning of the week, we talked about 5 truths that most people don't know about fasting. Then the second day, we talked about the benefits of fasting. And I'm telling you, the benefits of fasting will completely turn your life around. I mean, a supernatural turn. It is spectacular, right? Then we talked about what is fasting exactly and what are the different types of fasting. You know, what is fasting and what are the different types of fasting? And then yesterday, as we were talking about this, we were talking about, let's see here, the different how to fast. Yesterday, we went into the details of exactly how to fast. what to do, how to prepare yourself, what kind of attitude. And today we're answering frequently asked questions and what to expect while you're fasting. So right now I want to jump right into some questions. And here's what I want. If you have questions on fasting right now, drop them in the comments. I may already have the answer lined up to answer, but I'm going to try and answer everybody's questions that they have about fasting. So if you have something, drop it in the comments right now. Okay, so the first question that I have about fasting is, how do I know when to stop? How do I know when to stop fasting? Right? And so a lot of times people can be going through a fast, and ultimately, if you prayed correctly at the beginning, then what you'll see is that God will give you a timeline. And so how to stop, you should already have that located if you prayed correctly. If you listened to what we said yesterday about how to fast, we want to hear from the Lord. But here's what I want you to see. I have been in fast, and I went further than what the Lord told me, and then it just didn't feel right, and I had this leading to stop. Ultimately, you should stop when you've heard from the Lord very clearly, and on that, I would also get confirmation. In other words, I would not just hear from the Lord. Get confirmation on it. You have a confirmation available if you're planted in a church with a pastor that's fasting. And if you're not planted in a church with a pastor that's fasting, then find another church. Find another church, honestly. I mean, one of the things that you want to do is you want to get into a place that's growing, and that's not just you and the people. You want that whole ministry growing and the pastor as well. And if that pastor is fasting and he's on that track, he's going to have confirmation for you. He's going to know when to go and when to stop. And so hear from the Lord and get confirmation. And don't be, I've had times where the Lord said, I want you to go longer than what you thought you were going. I've had times where He said, I want you to go shorter than that. So hear from the Lord. But ultimately, when you hear from the Lord at the beginning, you pretty much want to fulfill that. That's why you want to hear and have resolve before you even start. You want to know when to stop. Get that confirmation as well. Here's the second question. Should you tell your family and friends? Should you tell your family and friends? Well, the Bible tells us for the most part that no, we're not to tell our family and friends. There's a verse that says, don't let your left hand know what the right hand is doing. That gives us an idea. And the Lord says this, what you do in private, I will reward you openly. So the Bible shows us, for the most part, we're not supposed to talk about that and share that. We can go into a fast together, but we're not sitting there talking about our service to the Lord, what we're doing that should be private. And here's what, when you do that and you uphold that, you will walk out with a better blessing, because God says, He gives us this principle in the Word that if I go and I share everything that I'm doing, what I'm giving in my tithes and offerings, what I'm fasting, how long I'm praying, He said, that's your reward. So in other words, if you want your fasting to have a full reward, you don't want to be sharing it with everybody. What I would recommend, though, is tell your pastor for confirmation and accountability. In other words, a good pastor can say, yeah, I think you're right on it, and then now you have good confirmation. It's not just you by yourself, you have good confirmation, but also that pastor will help keep you accountable. When your flesh tries to pressure you, that pastor will say, hey, you told me 21 days, let's go for it. You can do this, you got this, right? And so one way, when you fast, especially if you do an extended fast, I can even tell during this week already my face is slimming down, I've lost weight, and people can probably see that. So they may ask you what's going on. And so what you can tell them is say, I've changed my eating habits. Right? You don't have to tell them you're fasting. You can just say, I've changed my eating habits. I asked the Lord some years ago what to do on that, and that's what He told me. All right, so now, the next thing is this. Let's see here. I want to make a note here. All right, here's the next thing. Next question. Should kids fast? Should children fast? And this actually comes up a lot. And here's the biggest question that I have for that. Did the Lord, and somebody put these questions in the comments. These are the questions we've asked so far, is how do we know when to stop? Should we tell our families and friends? And here's the third question, should children fast? And if you have questions, drop them in the comments right now. Should children fast? Oh, here's the question that I have first off for that. Did the Lord tell them to fast? Because if the Lord has told that child to fast, then that's what they need to do. No matter what you think, if that's what the Lord's told them, that's what they need to do. The question is, did the Lord tell them? That's why, again, you can go to a pastor and help get confirmation on that. But here's one of the things. I've had times where I really wasn't expecting my kids to fast. I've had Rachel, Abigail come up to me and say, Dad, we got to fast. We're fasting, and here's what we're doing. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, praise God. Did the Lord tell them to fast? Just because they're young doesn't mean the Lord won't talk to them. You look at the prophet Samuel. He talked to him early. The high priest didn't hear it, but the boy heard it. The boy heard the Lord. So did the Lord tell them to? Generally, I would say this, that if they are 12 years old and older, I think that it's good for them to fast. And you're like, well, it may stunt their growth. We're talking about 3 weeks in their lifetime. For most people, that would be the most. 3 weeks in their lifetime. And, one of the things, it's not going to stunt their growth. It's not going to hurt them. Actually, it will help them. It will help them establish the right habits. It will help them remember in 1 Timothy 4. Let's just go read that real quick. 1 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 7 and 8. It's a great thing. It says at the end of verse 7, on the other hand, discipline yourself for the purpose of godliness. That's a command. That command is not just to adults. That command is to children as well. Discipline yourself for the purpose of godliness. Verse 8, for bodily discipline is only of a little profit, but godliness is profitable for all things, since it holds promise for the present life and also for the time to come. In other words, do you want your children profitable? That's the question. Do you want your children profitable? I'm making notes here because I'm going to add to my notes. The Lord's giving me stuff while we're right in the middle of it. Do you want your children profitable? If you want them profitable, then they need to go after godliness. They need to purpose themselves for the purpose of godliness. They need to go after that, discipline themselves for the purpose of godliness. Then that means God's going to call them to fast too. They have a relationship with the Lord just like you do. Just because they're children doesn't mean anything. Plus, most of them need to stop eating some of the junk food. I know mine have had multiple moments, and me too. Like, I needed to stop doing this physically. I needed to break some of these habits. Kids do too. We have, this is one of those things where we want to discipline ourselves for that, and I want my children to profit. When I've seen my children fast, I'm telling you, they have gone to another level. They've had breakthrough. Just this past Sunday, I was praying over the past couple of weeks going into this new year. I was praying for my children and for my daughter. For my daughters, and both of them, the Lord had me prophesying over them. It's time for breakthrough. It's time for a breakthrough in your life. Well, how do you think they're going to get it? Well, one way is impartation and the glory of the Lord, but they can also profit themselves by going after the Lord themselves. I'm teaching them to go after God, putting the world second, God first, right? And so this is a great thing. I would say if the kids are 12 years old and older, I would say, yeah, they can fast. And that's what our kids have done for quite some time. Now, if they're younger than that, can they fast? They still can. But here's what I would recommend for kids, no matter what age they are. Find a way for them to participate in the fast that your family and church is doing on some level. Find a way for them to participate on some level. It's important that everybody has a participation level. Now, one of the things that you want to see is this. Excuse me. How can they participate? Well, one way they can participate is they can give up sugar or snacks or junk food. In other words, we're not allowing them to keep the same. Like right now, that's what our son Luke, he's 7 years old. Excuse me. He's 7 years old. And what we have him doing, no dessert, no sugar, no snacks, and no junk food. And he's doing awesome. He's not even whining about it. He's doing really good. And he's 7 years old. He's participating. Excuse me. Got water hung in my throat. All right. The next question. What if you're a diabetic or pregnant or nursing? These three kind of fall into the same category. Somebody put that in the comments. Should I fast if I'm diabetic, pregnant, or nursing? Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about after these frequently asked questions is what to expect while you're fasting. And sometimes when you're diabetic, pregnant, or nursing, you may experience some of this. And I'm going to talk about this. So if you're diabetic, pregnant, or nursing, make sure you hold on until I get to the part about what to expect, because I'm going to give you some things that'll be important for you to know. But here's the key. Here's the key for everybody. Remember, my goal is for everyone that's watching or hearing this to consider how to fast at a higher level. To consider how to fast at a higher level. Now, here's the issue that I think a lot of people miss. Instead of looking for a way to find a way to fast, many people are looking for a way out of fasting. And that's natural for the flesh to do. Don't beat yourself up if that's been you in the past, but don't stay at the same place. Let's go on and go higher. In other words, our heart as believers is, how can I find a way to go about godly discipline? Put that in the comments. How can I find a way to go about any godly discipline? This is a good question that we need to ask ourselves. How can I find a way to go about this godly discipline? How can I do that? How can I find a way? I need to make sure that I'm looking for ways to do that, not looking for ways to not do. To not do. All right, that's good English. Have this attitude. I'll find a way to fast somehow. Put that in the comments right now. I'll find a way to fast somehow. Put that in the comments. I will find a way somehow to fast. All right? And what you can do in that situation, if you're diabetic, pregnant, or nursing, is you can go to the Lord. He'll give you wisdom. See, and the answer that I'm going to give you, I just went to the Lord and I said, Lord, what do I tell people that are diabetic or pregnant or nursing? What do I tell them about fasting? And the first thing he did was he says, go to the Lord and say, Lord, I'm asking you to show me a way to participate in fasting. Show me a way to participate. Now, when you are diabetic, nursing, or pregnant, there's a couple of fasts that I think are the better ones for you, and I think they'll fall in line. But I want to tell you there are some side effects to fasting. We're going to get into that in just a second, and I want you to hear it because I want you to hear how to handle some of it and what is normal in a fast when you stop eating certain foods, okay? So the first thing, if you're diabetic, pregnant, or nursing, find a way to fast. Ask the Lord for wisdom. The 1 meal a day 1 meal a day fast is good. Why? Because when you have the 1 meal a day fast, you're actually still bringing in nutrients. You should be getting enough nutrients in your body to be able to fast. Now, the other thing is this. Let's say that you feel like the sugar may be low or something like that. Okay, then drink a cup of juice. Keep some juice with you. You're still not eating solid food during the day, but you drink that juice in that way. Now, here's the other thing. You should definitely check with somebody who's done some fasting and confirm. But here's one thing I want you to see. I want you to see this, is that one of the things that you want to do is you should fast. That specifically if you have diabetes. Diabetes is actually, a bondage. And fasting breaks every bondage. So you shouldn't be seeking the Lord. Lord, I'm expecting that this diabetes is going to be broken, that I'm going to be healed completely. Don't just take diabetes as yours forever, right? Go to the Lord and say, Lord, I'm believing you for healing. I have it now. I'm walking in it. Start applying faith towards that, and let's not stay in that same place, because it's even binding you up in how you can fast. That's not right. You know, it's not right. That's a hindrance of the devil, and we need to come against it. And so definitely don't just receive diabetes as a lifelong sentence, right? The whole point of fasting is to get closer to God, and if we are closer to God and we're applying all of His things, we want to get to the place where we are walking in divine health. So that's one thing to keep in mind as well. Now, another thing with diabetes, pregnant, and nursing is this actually is a good place for the Daniel fast or the Daniel diet. This is a good place for it. But when you talk about the Daniel fast and the Daniel diet, you know, there's mostly healthy foods on there. You know, I was talking to somebody yesterday about pregnancy and nursing, and I said, listen, the majority of your nutrients should not be coming from junk food and sugars, carbohydrates. You know, they should be coming from healthy sources anyway. So for us to say, well, I can't fast because, you know, because I'm nursing or because I'm pregnant, that's actually something where we want to say, hey, I need to do this a better way anyway. Get my protein, get my nutrients from other sources. Well, one meal a day and the Daniel diet is actually a good way. And I would say either one of those is fine. That's finding a way to fast. It's finding a way. On the Daniel diet, I did some more research where I just wanted to show you what was in the Daniel diet. Basically, when you're on the Daniel diet, it's yes, because we're answering the question here. On the Daniel diet, the things you can have: fruits, nuts, vegetables, high quality oils like olive oils, herbs and spices, and water. Things you can't have: meat, eggs, dairy, processed foods, preservatives, sweeteners, salt, sodas, etc. And so those are the things that are commonly utilized on the Daniel fast. And that's some good information. That's a healthy diet. You know, I'm not against a Daniel diet. It's actually a very healthy diet. I don't know that I would recommend it all the time, but it is a very good kind of detoxing diet. And it's a good one that people can participate on when they have a pregnancy or they're nursing or they have been a diabetic. Now, here's the last question that I have for today. Do you have any questions? If so, drop them in the comments quickly. Guys, if you saw one in the comments that I missed, make sure that I have it. All right, here's the last one. While I'm on my fast, can I use water enhancers? Can I use water enhancers? Well, we had this question yesterday from Miss Marilyn. Here's the issue. It really depends on the fast that the Lord has instructed you to do. So if He's told you water only and nothing else, then that's what you need to do. If He's told you that you can have water and He's told you no calories, then you would have to find a water enhancer that had no calories, right? But here's something that I'm going to get into in what to expect in just a minute about the fast. And I want anybody who's a diabetic or pregnant or nursing, make sure you pay attention to what I'm going to say in the next few minutes. And on this is that I would definitely limit caffeine and any diuretics because of dehydration. So the water enhancers, a lot of them come with caffeine built in. A lot of them have caffeine in them, and just be mindful of it and know about it, and I'm going to talk to you about that in just a second, because there are some things to expect while you're fasting that happen then that don't normally happen at other times, so it's important. Okay, were there any other questions, or did I cover most everybody's? Okay, good. If you have questions in here, you can always drop a comment in here at a later date, and we'll try to reach out to you and get that to you. So now I want to talk about what to expect when you're fasting. What should you expect when you're fasting? Number one, I'm going to talk about physical and spiritual. What you should expect physically and what you should expect physically. So I want to talk about first the spiritual side of that. Spiritually, what you should expect during a fast is that you should expect that your connection with God increases. Your intimate fellowship with God increases, right? Number one, you should be looking at that. You should sense it. Now, I will tell you, like when I did my first 40-day fast, I had one of the greatest revelations I ever had on day 2. But from day 2 forward, if God was there, I almost couldn't tell it, right? So now I want you to see this, and I'm telling you this for a reason. I mean, from day 2 to day 40, for 38 days, if God was there, I couldn't tell it. I was praying, I was in my word, I was doing everything that I should be doing, but I couldn't tell it. And so here's what I had to do. I believed by faith that my intimacy and my fellowship was changed. Now, I want to tell you, when I came off that fast, I was believing the whole time. I was like, I can't feel anything. See, a lot of times we base what we receive or what we think we've received on what we sense or what we feel. Sometimes when God's doing stuff, you don't have a feeling on it. You don't have a sense on it. And that's why I'm telling you that what to expect while you're fasting, you should expect and believe for your intimate fellowship, your connection with God to go to a higher level. You should expect it. Now, not just because you feel it, but it's there. It's happening. Why? Because His Word tells us it's happening. His Word shows us and makes that promise that we are moving closer into fellowship with Him when we fast. So in this fast, I didn't feel anything concerning Him. But I knew in my heart, and I believed in my heart, man, my intimacy and my fellowship's going up. I'm a changed person. And I'll tell you, when I came off of that fast, it became very evident very quickly that I had changed, that my whole world had changed. I was a different person, and I would not be the same. I knew I was a different person, and I wouldn't be the same from that day forward. And so one of the things that you should believe for is that your connection will go up. What to expect spiritually. You should expect revelation. Expect it and believe God, Lord, that you're showing me things, that my light is breaking out like the dawn. You should expect that God's going to show you His wisdom. The next thing is you should expect to have a reset, a complete reset of your fellowship with God. In intimacy, in your prayer time, in your word, a hunger for those things, expect and believe God to change those things. And let me add this, I've already talked about it some, but when you're in the middle of the fast, you may not feel what you expect. That's okay. You don't have to feel it. You don't have to sense all of that stuff. You might not feel and sense everything that you expect. Don't worry about that. Just keep your faith alive on it. God's working. God's doing. He's performing His word. He's sent it out. You are applying it, and that word is working in you. So just because you don't feel like something's happening, no. That does not mean that. You keep your faith and expectation on that. Here's the other thing to expect spiritually. When you actually stop fasting, most everybody I know that's been fasting the way the Lord asked them to, when they stop, they miss it. They kind of are like, man, I really wish I could keep on going. I really enjoyed that time because that fasting time becomes so sweet to them. That fasting becomes so sweet. It's like, oh, I want that again. I want that moment. Like I can sense it even as we're fasting. I can sense it right now. Just the sweetness of this fellowship with God. And it just excites me. I love that. And you actually can almost get addicted to it spiritually. It's like, I want more of that. I want more of that sweet presence of time with the Lord. And you'll miss it when you stop. Something else spiritual to expect when fasting. When you stop, almost every time either your flesh or the devil will actually, even if you fasted for a long period of time, when you stop, you'll almost feel that condemnation for stopping. you'll almost always feel that condemnation. Don't receive that. You just got finished fasting. The devil in your corrupted flesh is trying to trap you, trying to sneak one in on you. Don't accept that condemnation. Don't accept it, not one bit. It might be a sweet presence of God that you've had. Listen, don't expect for that sweet presence to go away because you stopped fasting either. Expect that we've gone to a higher level and we're staying here from this point on. And don't accept that condemnation from the devil because you finished a fast. Don't do that. Now I want to talk about what to expect in your body as you're fasting. So over the last few days, we talked about things most people don't know about fasting. We talked about the benefits of fasting that will completely turn your life around. We talked about what types of fasting there are, what are the different types, and what is fasting exactly? What's the goal? What's the purpose of it? And then we talked about how to fast yesterday. Today we answered frequently asked questions, and we're talking about what to expect to fast. If you want to see any of that, go back to these broadcasts this week. But now let's look at this. What can you expect in your body? And I think that this is very important. I think this is really good information and important because a lot of times people are tripped up in their fast simply because they don't know what to expect. I found that a lot of people, they'll get in day 3, 4, or 5, they're feeling funny, maybe nauseous, maybe their body is cleansing itself and they're having to go to the bathroom, and they're like, this is not normal, I have to stop. No, that is normal for your body when you stop the certain foods that you're inputting. For the most part, I don't know anybody that doesn't experience some of that. Now, what that can tell you is that what I've been eating on a regular basis is off track. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And if you'll clean that up, the fast will be easier. So first thing to expect physically when you're fasting is this. Hey, Pastor Bill Motley, so good to see you. I love you. And those are awesome meetings you're having up there in Danville with Ted Shuttlesworth Jr., and I know you're continuing tonight. That's awesome. Listen, so here's the first thing physically to expect. Number one, your body will reset. This is a great thing. When I did those extended fasts, immediately when you start fasting, your body starts to reset, okay? And my taste reset. That was an awesome thing. I didn't realize some of the flavors I was actually missing in some foods that I would have called bland, right? Many foods that I would have called bland actually were full of flavor, but because I've been eating all this other junk and all this other stuff with all the high seasonings on it, I actually needed my taste to reset so that I could taste those things again. All right. The other thing that'll happen, my blood sugar, I could feel my blood sugar reset. If you even read about medical things about the benefits of fasting, you'll see that it has so many different benefits. I could feel my blood pressure resetting. Part of that is because your body is actually eating up some of those fat stores while you're fasting, and it's taken away in removing some of that cholesterol, removing some of that fat from your bloodstream, things like that. It resets so many things in your body, and those are wonderful things, wonderful things. And will it completely reset everything? I can't say that, but I can tell you it will improve pretty much every function of your body. It's one of the greatest things that you can do. All right, and God knew that. He wanted us not only to be benefited in our spiritual man, but He wanted us to be benefited in our physical man as well. All right, so the first few days, day 1 through 4, the first day, what I found, what to expect when you're fasting. Generally, the first day for most people is okay. However, some people are so used to having, 3 meals a day that as soon as they skip breakfast, they're feeling it by lunchtime. And I get it. I've had that happen before as well. At this point in my life, when I'm fasting, I actually won't get hungry till day 2. The day 1 generally is good, but day 2 is actually when I'll feel the first little hunger pain. pangs. So one of the things to expect is that you'll probably go 2 or 3 meals before you feel that, but some people don't. Some people feel it right after the first meal. Maybe they have a high metabolism or something like that, and they won't always experience that the way that I have, but they can experience that. Generally on day 2, you're going to feel the hunger. You're going to feel that hunger coming on, and this is where it's good to have resolve. Make a commitment to God. I'm going to fast this, and I'm going to fast for this long. And generally in that second day, that's when a lot of people are tempted. The third and fourth day second, third, and fourth day are generally the strongest of the hunger. If you're doing a water fast or a liquid fast and not eating any food, and you're not taking in many calories, after the fourth day, generally, the third, fourth, or fifth day, that hunger subsides. And you don't feel the hunger like you did before. You don't have those hunger pains like you did before. They will lessen. And so it actually becomes easier and sweeter during those times. It's not that it's gone completely, but it will subside. Now, if you're doing a 1 meal a day fast, you will actually carry that hunger for the most part every day. You'll be okay in the morning, like if you're eating after 6 p.m. You'll actually be okay in the morning when you wake up, and about lunchtime you'll start to get hungry and you'll be ready to eat at 6 p.m. So if you're doing 1 meal a day, that's going to carry on. Amen. John just said the fourth day was tough for him. Today's been great. Today's his 5th day. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And that's the testimony of almost anybody. Okay. Now, so that's kind of day 1 through 4. Let me tell you this about day 1 through 4, because generally those are the most tough. After you get past day 1 through 4, generally you kind of get in a rhythm, and you can carry on. You realize, hey, this is the same no that I'm telling my flesh today on day 5, 6, 7 that I was telling my flesh on day 2, 3, and 4. And I can do that. I did it then. That was worse then. I can do it now. What are you doing? You're telling your flesh no, and you're telling God yes. And so here's a key now, and I said this yesterday about fasting, how to. The first thing is get hungry before you start fasting. In other words, get hungry for the things of God more than you're hungry for food, and that'll sustain you. When you have that hunger pain, you'll say, but I'm more hungry to walk in the glory of God. I'm more hungry to go after the Father. I'm more hungry to have the revelation and the wisdom that I need for favor in my life and provision, and to win souls and to see the kingdom of God advance. Lord, I'm hungry for you. God will fill you with that strength that you need to tell that physical hunger no. All right, the next thing to know to expect when you're fasting is your system will start to flush. Your system will start to flush. Yeah, amen. Buddy put that in. Write in the comments, I'm hungrier for God than I am for food. Put that in the comments. I'm hungrier for God than I am for food. Now, when you start fasting, your system will flush, okay? And that's a normal thing. There's multiple things that'll happen. A lot of times you don't have solid food, but even with a 1 meal a day, your body is processing all of that food. It's processing all of it, and it's kind of like your body's been used to processing more, so it has produced, I would say it's produced more acids and more ability to process food. So it's more actively attacking what you do give it. And so not only are you removing some bad things from your body and your body's resetting, but your system is processing it better. And so your system will flush. In other words, what does that mean? You're going to go to the bathroom a lot. And not to be crude, but it's just a reality of it. That is normal. That's a normal thing. That is your body fixing itself. That's your body getting rid of things that it doesn't need. And of course, yes, if you're drinking water, it runs right through you a lot of times. You need to go and pee a lot, and that's okay. That's a part of it, okay? So expect that a little bit. I'm always expecting always expecting that it's not a problem and that it's less. I'm believing God that it's less, and so it's more of a pleasant experience in that way. So put faith on that as well. But at the same time, if you have that happen, don't get, oh my goodness, what's happening to my body? That is a normal thing that happens when people fast. Part of the reason is we've been eating so much stuff that's not good for us that we're seeing the side effects of that, and that's going to come out in this next thing to expect as well. This is kind of the negative side of fasting, but it's actually not negative. It's actually a cleaning process. One of the things, that's why fasting is so good. It helps clean us and reset our body. I used to have a company, and we would keep systems clean. And manufacturing systems, we would clean out the lines in their plant. And one of the things that would happen if they haven't been doing the right things, and then we came in and did the right things, they would many times have problems in their lines. And the issue was, I would tell them, they would almost be mad at me because I did the right things to their system. And I would say, listen, those problems were already there. Those problems were already there. This doing the right thing just exposed them. It's better to fix them than to let the whole system degrade. In other words, what people experience negatively in fasting in their body, for example, their flushing system, dehydration and potential headaches, nausea, cobwebs, a lot of times those are symptoms of what we've been putting in before we fasted. And now we're seeing those problems come to the surface. But if you'll continue in the fast, you'll clean that up, and then when you're out of the fast, do a better job of putting the right things in. You won't have that as much. I'll tell you, this fast for me has been one of the greatest I've ever had, one of the easiest that I've ever had. I felt hunger the last couple of days, but the Lord has just supplied supernaturally. It's been awesome, and that's the level that you can get to. You keep on, just keep on, keep doing it. And now, I will say, if you're having any of these problems, do talk with somebody that has fasted a lot and make sure that you have a clear view of it. In other words, you don't want to talk to a pastor that's never fasted. Bad breath. That's another good one. You will have fasting breath. A lot of times when people fast, they have bad breath, and as part of that, getting that stuff out of there, it does seem to clean up, as you go along. But here, I need to write that down. That's pretty funny. Another thing is funny about fasting is, along the lines of bad breath, another thing that's funny about fasting is your smell will intensify. Your ability to smell will intensify. So when you're around a lot of people that are fasting and they all have bad breath, you'll smell it. You'll start to smell it more. I could literally, this is funny, when I did those 40-day fasts, my system reset so much. Somebody would walk in a room and breathe, just breathing like normal, I could smell their breath. My smell intensified so much. My system had gotten so cleaned out that I could tell anything that wasn't normal, anything that was an addition to that room. It was amazing what I could smell in that way. So, yeah. Priscilla says, I'll be social distancing. Yeah. All right, that's a part of your system flushing and not receiving all of the stuff that blocks it. All right, the next thing is, and this is a big one, is dehydration. You can get dehydrated on a fast, and you may say, all I'm doing is drinking water. How can I get dehydrated? Well, it's very simple, actually. If you understand basically about what sodium and salt does for your body, when I was in boot camp, one of the drill instructors told me that to not eat any salt or pepper on our food. So I listened, and I didn't eat any salt. Well, then it came along, I was actually getting bad cramps at night, and I was going to the bathroom a lot. I was dehydrated, and I went to the senior drill instructor, and I said, I need help. I'm having a problem. And actually, I didn't say that. It sounded more like, sir, this recruit is having some problems, sir. That's what it more sounded like. And anyway, he said, well, are you eating any salt? And I said, no, because you told me not to, drill instructor, sir. You know, I was like, no, somebody told me not to eat salt, so I wasn't doing it. He said, well, you big dummy. And he said, you need to eat salt. I was like, oh, okay, why? And he basically what he told me is when we take in salt and sodium in our body becomes like a sponge. But actually, when we do not have a supply of salt or sodium, you know, we do need some in our body. To be completely void of it is not a great thing. And so when we actually would remove the salt, our body stops being like a sponge and becomes more like a funnel. In other words, water will just flow right through you. So one of the things that's really good to do is to maintain a little bit of a sodium level, and I'll tell you how to do that. But now I want to go back, before I tell you about that, I want to go back to fasting because what happens is you're taking all of this water in, it's actually flushing your body, including flushing out sodium, right? Here's the other thing about that. I'm not eating foods with sodium in them, right? So my body's becoming more and more like a funnel, and now I can have cramps, nausea, diarrhea. All of these things can happen because of this. So now I'm sitting here, and here's the other thing, is that your body and food actually acts like a time release capsule of sorts. Think about if I had a piece of toast and bread, and it would hold water. It would go into my system, and as it's being processed, water would be coming out of that. So there's nothing to hold water. I'm not taking in sodium, and I've gotten to the place where my body is flushing that water out of there, okay? And so, or flushing that sodium out of there. So one of the things that I need to pay attention to is that intake of sodium. So what I'll do personally is if I'm on a water-only fast, one of the things that I would do is I would take a pinch of salt and I would throw it into my water. Not enough that I can really taste it, but I would throw some sodium in there, and that helps keep my body to retain some water. Now, to most people, that's a bad thing. Retain water? I don't want to retain water. Listen, you're already fasting. You're going to lose more weight. This is actually very healthy for you. Don't worry about retaining water while you're fasting, okay? That you actually want to, because without it, it can actually hurt you and harm you. So this is a very important thing. You have less sodium intake. Your food is not acting as a time release hydration, and so then we also have we need to take in some salt. Now, if you're on a liquids fast too, what you can do is have like a cup. Maybe once a day, have a cup of like Gatorade or Powerade that adds some electrolytes, some electrolytes and some sodium to us. You can add that and have like a cup of that, and that will help you as well. So I generally will have some pretty much every day to help keep my body in that way. Like for example, on day 2 and 3 of this fast, I actually felt a little bit of cramping. I could tell I was a little bit dehydrated. Even though I was drinking a lot of water, I could tell already that I was a little bit dehydrated. And so I made sure to get a pinch of salt in that water and help make myself more like a sponge for water instead of a funnel. All right, now here's the other part about dehydration. This is why I was saying about people that are using the water enhancers. You want to really limit caffeine and what's called diuretics, okay? Diuretics. You want to limit those. Here's why. Caffeine is a natural diuretic. Okay, a diuretic will actually cause you to flush water out of your body. So a lot of times people are drinking coffee during the fast and they don't realize that's actually making the fast harder on them because they're taking in too much caffeine. I'm not saying that you can't have any if you're like on a liquid fast. I've had caffeine while I'm on the fast, but I am telling you I would be wise about it, because if you have too much, it can actually cause a reverse effect. I'm going to give you another thing about caffeine as well and headaches. Doing some study recently, but let me tell you this. Here are some of the the natural diuretics, they rid the body of sodium, which causes you to flush water out and not retain it, and you can be dehydrated. Natural diuretics are coffee, soda, because it has caffeine in it, green and black tea, caffeine, alcohol, ginger. These are some of our normal everyday things that we will eat that actually causes us to flush water out of our body by flushing out sodium. And then we can get dehydrated. So if you're having these things, I would say limit them. I would seek things that don't have caffeine in it. Let me list those things again. Coffee, soda, green or black tea, caffeine in any form, alcohol, and ginger. Okay, these are natural everyday diuretics that we will use outside of medical ones, and they will cause you to be more dehydrated. Now, because of this, I'm going to talk one more thing about herbal tea. I would look at the caffeine. I would look at the caffeine that herbal tea would have in it. Some of them have it, some of them don't. I would try to find the ones that don't first. I'm not saying that you can't have it, but I would limit it. I'll give you this story. When I was fasting for that 40 days, and specifically the second 40-day fast, I literally had 1 cup of coffee one day, all right? I just wanted something different. Because my body had become so clean and I literally was in tune with my body more than I'd ever been before, I literally felt that coffee through the next day. In other words, I could feel the dehydration effects of that caffeine and coffee all the way through the next day, like a day and a half, I could feel it. And that's got to do with what's called half-lives, which I'll talk about in a second. But many times when people fast, they are limiting their caffeine, which I'm going to talk about how that works. Or they're limiting preservatives in their food. They're not taking in all of these other things, and our body is used to it. It's chemically dependent on that, and when we take it away, it can cause potential headaches, nausea, and then also just from a lack of food, you can have some cobwebs in your head. Now, I'll tell you where your thinking feels funny or fuzzy. If you're on a job that's very important, heavy equipment, things like that, you can't have any cobwebs whatsoever. That's where I would seek the Lord about how to do that. But then I would also seek Him on doing like the 1 meal a day fast so that you keep enough food in there to not get that fuzziness. If you're doing a liquid fast, you are going to have some fuzziness in your thinking. That's a part of it because your body utilizes food to process thought. Okay? Your body utilizes food to process thought. And so it's actually something that is a natural thing of it, but you should believe God that it's not going to happen. You should believe God that it's not going to happen. Talking about diuretics, Joni said, well, what about hot chocolate? It depends, Joni, you just have to be led. I would look at the caffeine level. I don't know, chocolate has caffeine in it generally, but each one you'd have to check and see the caffeine and just seek the Lord on it. Diuretic, is decaf coffee still a diuretic? It still is a little bit of, it's better, but it's because it doesn't have as much caffeine, but it still does have some caffeine, and coffee in itself is kind of a diuretic without the caffeine. So anyway, and Nicole put this, that hot chocolate also has a good bit of sugar, so it depends on what kind of fast that you're looking at doing there. All right, now, the next thing is, because of the potential headaches, nausea, and cobwebs, those things are generally normal, but you should believe God that they will be less. You should believe God that they would be less. Yeah, my wife just put up something. Pastor Nicole said, unless it's naturally caffeine-free, it'll generally have at least a little bit of caffeine in it. It's not completely void of it. And if it's not naturally caffeine-free, that means that they ran it through a process first to decaffeinate it. A lot of times that process has more bad stuff in it than what they were trying to take out. So for the most part, I don't generally have caffeine-free stuff like coffee and sodas and stuff like that. That's why I don't have a lot of sugar-free stuff either, because a lot of times the process process or the substitute is worse. There's some newer ones out now that are better, but anytime you run anything through a process, a lot of times the process is worse than the thing you're trying to remove. So now, I did have somebody, I'll talk about that when I'm talking about the caffeine half-life. And this is important because people run through this, but not just for fasting. This is for everyday things. But you can have headaches, nausea, and cobwebs. And basically what you're seeing is where we stop the normal intake of those things, where we're chemically dependent on it, and we stop them, you're having withdrawals from it, okay? And so that will pass. That's the thing about fasting. After about day 3, 4, or 5, it will pass, and you'll stop having all of that stuff if you're keeping yourself hydrated properly. That kind of stuff will pass, and so keep going. Keep going. But do reach out if you have questions or if you have any heavy concerns. Definitely reach out. Don't just go, in a stupid way and keep going into something without reaching out and asking questions. It's very important that you do that. I don't recommend that people just blindly keep going and they have these alarming symptoms in their body. Don't do that. I'll tell you that I have pushed through most symptoms in my body during those fasts, and so I know what happens along the way. If you have questions, feel free to ask me. Here's the other thing. But one of the things that's very good is when you stop fasting, go back and re-examine what you have been taking in. Re-examine those things that you have been taking in, and make sure that, so in other words, start planning for the next fast. I don't want to have those same feelings. If my body's reacted that way, I shouldn't have that much anyway. So go ahead and let your body help you see things that you don't need, and ask the Lord, He'll show you those things. Now, this is important with caffeine. I was wondering, I was researching recently, and this is why some people have the headaches, even nausea, is caffeine, like most, pretty much any chemical, has a half-life, what's called a half-life. A half-life is basically this. What's the period of time before the amount in the body goes from full at 100% to half of that to 50%? So for caffeine, it's around 6 or 7 hours, okay? In a normal body, like in my body, and I'm around 200 pounds. So in my body, right now I'm like 215. But in my body, when I have 1 cup of caffeine, I ran the numbers. I want to show you this. If I have just 1 cup of caffeine per day, just 1 cup a day, 1 cup of coffee per day, okay? What happens is, as soon as I take that coffee in the morning, I have 1 cup of caffeine in my body. 24 hours later, when I have the next cup of coffee, there's actually, because of the half-life of caffeine, and I noticed this in my body once I started fasting, that what happened was I would have 1 cup of coffee a day, and about a week and a half in, I would sleep, but not well. And eventually it would get to the place where I was having a hard time sleeping. I was like, what is that? And so I researched this recently. If I have that 1 cup of coffee one day, 24 hours later, there's still, and this doesn't seem like much, but there's 1/10 of that cup of caffeine or cup of coffee left in my body. 1/10, okay? 1/10 left. So on day 2 of consistently having 1 cup a day, when I take in my 1 cup for the day, I'm adding it to the 10th that was left. So I actually have in my body at that moment 1.1 cups of coffee. Now, that starts to add up. On day 8, even though I'm only having 1 cup per day, if I have it every day, on day 8, there's 2 cups of coffee in my body, okay? Now that's, in 8 days, it doubled, right? On day 12, I have 3 cups in my body because the amount keeps increasing, it starts multiplying. On day 12, even though I'm only drinking 1 cup a day, in my body is now 3 cups worth of caffeine when I add that day's amount to it. All right, on day 21, you have 7 cups. And on day 30, if you had 1 cup of coffee 30 days in a row, there would be 17 cups of coffee and caffeine in your body. 17. So now you can see how people will only have a cup or 2 cups a day, and you can see how all of a sudden 1 cup's not getting it anymore because they already have 17 cups in their body. What's that 1 cup doing? You see, and it just keeps adding up. Well, then if they cut coffee off, they think, well, I'm just cutting 1 cup off. But what actually happens is you're cutting back 17 cups and a daily need, a fix that you need. And all of a sudden their body will rebel to that, and they'll have some headaches and things like that. So one of the things that I would do is, one of the things that I can recommend on a daily, not just when you're fasting, but on a daily basis is every few days, if you like coffee every day, every few days, don't have any coffee. Now, and let me just add this to you. If you have 2 cups, all those numbers double, right? 2 cups, those numbers double. So if I had 2 cups a day, on day 30, it's over 34 cups in my body. Right? This is crazy numbers, right? And so one of the things that you need to see is every few days, it'd be good to have no caffeine for a couple of days. And that breaks that cycle. By breaking it every couple of days, it breaks the cycle of that buildup in your body. And that's why, me personally, I've never had headaches, because I never had coffee every single day. And so a lot of times when people fast, this is what they're experiencing and not realizing that they have that much chemicals in their body from that. Let me add this, it's not just coffee, it's anything with caffeine. So it doesn't have to be coffee. What if it's soda? What if it's one Coke, each day, and you're having the caffeine that's in there? It builds up the same way. It builds up the exact same way. Even if it's tea that's caffeinated, it builds up the same way. So you want to make sure that you know about that and have control of it. That will help keep those headaches and nausea and cobwebs down. But remember, the headache, nausea, and cobwebs many times is because we've been feeding our body some things that we shouldn't, and after about day 3 or 4, those will pass, and then you'll be in the clear, and you'll have that cycle broken, and you can keep it broken. All right, amen. Now, if it continues, then you need to seek counsel and advice. All right, now, when you're fasting, if you ever do a 40-day fast, what you'll see, and we see it in the Word, that in Matthew 4, is that when Jesus hit about 40 days, it says, the Bible says, and he was hungry, right? There's something, your body will kind of go into a rest mode for the 40 days. After the first 3 or 4 days, your body will say, oh, we're fasting, and it'll go into a conserve mode, right? That's why you get sleepy. That's why you get tired, is because you don't have as much nutrients coming in to feed you, and your body is saying conserve energy, conserve energy. All right, and so hold on one second. And so what you see is your body has a natural thing around day 40. It wakes the body up and it makes it super hungry, because it says if you don't eat something, you're going to die. And so the body has, God's design is amazing. And so I want to tell you what to expect in your body is if you get around day 40, you're going to have that where it wakes you up and says, hey, you need to eat something now or you're not going to make it. Find food. Find food. And that's what it does. So what to expect when you're fasting, that's what happens around day 40. Here's the last thing that happens in your body while you're fasting. When you stop fasting, especially if you've not been eating any solid food, your stomach will dump a lot of stomach acids on that first bit of food, and it can cause it can hurt. Actually, that is how people have died from fasting, is because they came back into it. They didn't eat small amounts of food. And because of this, I would say eat slow, small, and light. When you stop fasting, eat slow, small, and light. And for every week, you should have 1 day of small, slow, and light eating. So if you fasted for 3 weeks, you should at a minimum take 3 days of eating slow, small, and light, because that your stomach acids will actually dump in there on that first food you put in there, and it will so aggressively attack the food it can attack your body as well. And so you don't want to eat a bunch of food that requires a bunch of acid. You actually want to eat small amounts. What I recommend is whatever you normally eat, probably cut it in a quarter. And then yesterday we recommended BRAT, B-R-A-T, BRAT, B-R-A-T, which stands for bananas, rice, applesauce, and toast. I would recommend brown rice and dry toast, okay? When you come off of an extended fast, slow, small, and light food. That means don't eat fast. It's better to have several small meals, okay? And eat slow. Don't just gulp it down. Eat slow. Eat slow. What's also funny, when I fasted those 40 days, it was funny how I had been so used to not chewing. When I chewed for the first time after 40 days, I was like, oh, this is weird. I've never felt this. This feels weird to chew, and that was a strange feeling. But also light food, and that's what the BRAT combination is. It's light foods that are very easy for your body to digest. It's not a lot of over-seasoned stuff, not a lot of super fatty stuff. When I was in boot camp, we ate some pretty healthy. We ate, pretty much every meal. But John said, I broke one year with pizza and wings. Third worst decision of my life. Now we all want to know what the first and second was, John, but that's all right. Yeah, that's not smart. And so anyway, when I was in boot camp, we ate pretty healthy, but when we got to the day with our family, I went out. I didn't know this. I didn't know this about our body or anything. I went out and, we ate healthy, but we were eating on a regular basis. I went out and we went out with the family on visitation day, and I had country style steak, country fried steak, I think. Oh my gosh. I felt like I was going to throw up. I went to the bathroom. I felt like I had a hangover. All those preservatives and all that flavor, my body was not used to it. And the same kind of stuff happens when you fast. So don't think, and here's the other thing. I bet if I ask him, did the pizza taste like you thought it would? And did the wings taste like you thought it would? The answer would be no. Many times, what we think it's going to taste like, it doesn't, because our taste has reset. And food that we've been enjoying, it doesn't taste like that actually. Actually, when your taste buds reset, it doesn't taste the same. So what I would do, especially when you're on an extended fast or a liquid-only fast, small, slow, and light. Don't eat heavy foods. Don't eat a lot of food, and don't eat fast. And if you utilize that BRAT, bananas, rice, applesauce, and toast, brown rice and dry toast, that's a great thing to come in. He said, yeah, the pizza didn't taste the same. The wings, he said, tasted about the same. But that's what you can expect when you're fasting. And so I hope that this week has been a great, great help to you and help you learn about fasting, what to expect. I've never broken it down this much in this much detail as I did this week, but I think you have some tools that will really help you to fast, to go higher in your life, to reset not only your body, but your spiritual fellowship. And we just praise God, because we know that if you're fasting, then you're going to see some great and mighty things of God. Every yoke is going to be broken. Your light is going to break forth like the dawn. It's going to be awesome testimonies. And send your testimonies in. Go to what'sright.com and send us your testimonies. You can always go there as well. Send in your questions. Like, y'all aren't asking enough questions. Ask questions. Find something. Get hungry enough that you're digging into the Word and find questions. Ask questions. We want to answer your questions, not just on fasting, but on our frequently asked questions, our question and answer segment that we have, that Buddy and I have. We want to answer your questions, not just on fasting, on anything. And so one of the things that I want to tell you is this. When you find something that's been beneficial, the Word tells us this, that this has fed me. then it says, then I need to sow into a place that's been feeding me. I hope that everybody's been fed this week. I hope that you've learned about fasting. I pray that you will go to new heights, and if you do fast, I know you will, because the Bible promises it. But here's the thing, don't just sit there and say, okay, thanks for the information, see ya. If you did it at Burger King, you'd get arrested, you know. It is biblical. I'm telling you, the Bible tells leaders to tell the people the work that they should do. This is a part of the things that you should do. If you've been fed by this, if you've been ministered to, you should sow on each service that you are fed by, even if it's a small amount. But here's the benefit of this week. When you sow, we want to give something to you anyway. You're not going to get away without quickly receiving something. Ted Shuttlesworth Jr. has his new book, The Complete Guide for Biblical Fasting. Everybody who sows this week, no matter what the amount, I don't care if it's $1, we're going to send you his book. And so you can sow right now. You can go on giveww.org, or on Facebook. You can type it in the comments. You can type in #donate and the amount. And John Napier says Cash App. John, we don't have Cash App set up for the church yet, but if you'll get in touch with us, we can make that happen and get that accomplished for you. So anyway, here's one of the things is, as you're sowing, sow with expectation. Believe God. I'm not just handing something away. Actually, I'm believing God for a supernatural increase, supernatural harvest, because that's how He works. We literally had somebody that sowed last week, and this week they had the plan in place to pay off $16,000 worth of debt. We're believing God for supernatural debt cancellation. It's awesome. So anyway, will somebody put the link on there for John so it's easy for him? Giveww.org, and so thank you very much.